Welcome back to Ownership by Ritholtz. I'm Nick Sapienza. Today we're tackling a big question. If you had $3 million saved, would you feel confident retiring tomorrow? Most people think that's plenty, and it is, but I've seen firsthand how even sizable nest eggs can fall short. In this episode, I'm sharing a real story. A successful couple who did everything right, yet when they came to retirement, they faced a critical shortfall. We'll explore how we solved their problem, the adjustments that we made, and most importantly, how aligning their spending with their true values didn't restrict them, it actually created more freedom. So here's the breakdown. We're going to call them Rich and Rachel. They're both 63 years old. He was a defense contractor making around $400,000 per year, and she was a hospital administrator making about $200,000 per year. Of the $3 million that they had saved, about $1.8 million of that was in traditional IRAs, another $500,000 was in a Roth IRA, and about $700,000 in a taxable brokerage account. The home is paid off recently, and they're planning on claiming Social Security at age 67, which should get them about $92,000 per year combined when adjusted for inflation. At least that's our estimate. Now, their spending goal, well, that is $240,000 per year net of taxes, or $20,000 per month. Now, herein lies the problem. $3 million sounds like a lot, and it is, but it's not when you're spending $20,000 per month net of taxes, retiring early, facing potentially a 30-year time horizon, and you also have to think about inflation, market volatility, and rising healthcare costs. The math just doesn't work. They assumed that they would need about $300,000 per year when they account for taxes. That's 10% of the portfolio per year. It's unsustainable. At 5% even, that $3 million only supports closer to $150,000 per year, half of what they need. Now, no one spends exactly as a plan predicts. It's a very linear assumption, and who knows if whether or not they're actually going to spend the exact amount every year and increase that with inflation every single year. It's lumpy, but they did have a problem. Their lifestyle had grown faster than their portfolio. They knew that they couldn't afford to continue to spend like this, but cutting back felt like a failure. Despite all their success throughout their careers, being able to put their kids through college and foot the bill, they didn't live up to their own expectations. But here's the thing. They weren't worried about running out of money necessarily. They were worried about losing the lifestyle that money made possible. The few trips they take every year, the ability to say yes when their kids want to do a big family vacation, giving to their church, sponsoring causes that they care about, and picking up the check at dinner without flinching. The freedom to be generous, the freedom to be spontaneous. That's the part that the spreadsheet doesn't show, but it's the part that we feel most deeply. It's hard not to be emotional about this. And it led them to asking all the wrong questions. Should we cut out travel entirely? Should we start Social Security early, right when we retire? Should we be more aggressive with our portfolio? Those are tactics. We need a strategy. The first thing that we did was we got clear on their actual goals. Now, clients tend to come to us for one of three reasons, or a combination of. They want to fix something, they want to accomplish something, or they want to avoid something. In this case, they came to us for all three. They wanted to fix the shortfall, of course. The things that they wanted to accomplish were things like taking or sponsoring family trips, paying for their daughter's wedding, and providing financial support to their future grandkids. Most importantly, keeping that lifestyle that they had gotten so accustomed to intact. And they wanted to avoid running out of money or inflicting permanent damage on their portfolio in the early years of their retirement, or being a financial burden to their kids in the future. And so we knew that they had general goals, as everyone does, and they also had specific goals along the way. Let's dive into the lifestyle. Let's get really specific about what that actually looks like. So we conducted a spending audit. Now, initially, I asked Rich and Rachel, I just said, hey, let me know what you think you'll spend in retirement. Look back at the last 6 or 12 months of your spending, come up with a number, add a buffer just for safety purposes. When they came back, they said, okay, we looked at our expenses. It looks like it's about $20,000 per month. We'd like to maintain that. But obviously, since that wasn't going to work, we needed to do that actual spending audit. We needed to simply create a spreadsheet and have a few separate columns. The first column would be their fixed expenses. What did they have to spend money on to sustain their standard of living? Things like their taxes, their insurance, property taxes, maintenance, etc. That came in around $5,000 per month. Now, the home had been paid off recently. Now, the other side of the ledger, the discretionary expenses, is where obviously what made up the bulk of that. Over $15,000 per month was spent on things like travel mostly, but the other things you could say were habitual lifestyle creep. Now, we knew that travel was really important to them, but we wanted to dissect that a little bit further. And when we looked at travel, we saw that they took, on average, between 5 to 6 trips per year. Now, some of those trips weren't big, extravagant getaways. They weren't going to the Bahamas or Turks and Caicos every summer, but they were taking random, spontaneous weekend getaways. And they still wanted the ability and the freedom to be spontaneous, but we needed to be more intentional. Now that you're retired and virtually every day is Saturday, do you think it's still important to maintain those random weekend getaways? Or could we be more intentional there? Could we cut out some of these trips and could we just reallocate that money to larger trips, maybe a few larger trips throughout the year, 2 or 3 larger trips? And they said, well, without work, we really don't need to get away to relieve stress. These kinds of trips are less important to us, but we still want to travel quite a bit. And most importantly, we want to keep the family sponsored trip that we like to do every year with our kids and our future grandkids. So that's a non-negotiable. But by reallocating those resources, we were able to actually spend more and have just better trips in general. And so by getting clear on their values, cutting out a lot of the lifestyle creep that came up, things that wouldn't continue into retirement, we were actually able to cut out about $35,000 per year from their budget, or $205,000 was their new net spending number. So now that we've cut expenses, we've established the non-negotiables, we've really gotten very clear on their values, it was time to talk about income and where they were going to get that income from. And so first and foremost, of course, is the portfolio. Now, this is going to do 2 things for us. It's going to act as a bridge until we start Social Security, and it's going to be a buffer against the most critical risk to retirees. That risk is called sequence of returns risk. In other words, it's the risk that you retire into a market with below average or even negative returns. Think about the people that retired during the dot-com bubble or the great financial crisis. That's a common fear amongst retirees, especially as they go from saving into the portfolio to spending down the portfolio or taking from the portfolio. Establishing a bucket strategy was going to be critical to establishing that bridge and to mitigating that risk of sequence risk. And so what we did was we put 2 years worth of spending needs in their cash bucket. Now, it's not necessarily just cash. It's going to be earning something around 4% today. But that's going to be established through money market funds and treasury bills. We then took 5 years worth of expenses and put that into their bond bucket. Now we've covered 7 years of their living expenses, and that 7-year gap is also about the length of time until they are both on Social Security. And then we put the remainder in stocks. Now, this is in stark contrast to their current portfolio. You see, one of the things about a high level of income is that it affords you a high risk tolerance. You're not so much concerned about market volatility or the bear market in 2020 or even 2018 or even 2022 when you have $600,000 a year in household income. You're able to max out your retirement accounts. You're able to pay for your kids' education, live a lavish lifestyle or a comfortable lifestyle, and still have money left over to save. And now things are different. You see, we have a personal risk tolerance about how they felt about the level of risk or the set of trade-offs they were comfortable with. And then we have what's called a risk capacity, which is how much risk can the portfolio actually afford. The bottom line is that diversification is going to be very important, and bucketing their portfolio in this manner is going to be critical to sustaining their success and making sure that they enjoy their retirement over the next 7 years and that they have a plan that's durable. The next income solution is, of course, their Social Security and the timing of when they take it. With this, there's no free lunch. While delaying doesn't make the early years easier, it makes the rest of the plan stronger. You can look at a variety of scenarios, and we have, where we take Social Security right away, we take it both at full retirement, we delay and wait until age 70, collect delayed retirement credits. But we think the best combination is going to be to do a staggered filing approach, where Rachel files for her benefit at age 67, and she gets an estimated $46,000 per year, and Rich delays until age 70. He continues to collect about 8% in delayed retirement credits, and he takes his payout at $57,000 per year. Now, why is this better than the other approach of delaying until age 70, which seems to be the common recommendation, especially in financial planning circles? Well, most people are looking to maximize a benefit. And it very well could be that we get to that point and we decide when Rachel's 67 to delay it further and let her take it at age 67 if the results come in higher than our own expectations. But right now, with our expectations intact, we found that the math works better. If we take a look at this chart, we have them both delaying Social Security until age 70. We run the risk of reaching an 8 or even 9% withdrawal rate. It could be that we reach that level of withdrawals exactly, and we could do so in a bear market. So to further mitigate that sequence of returns risk that we're talking about and making sure that we get the first 10 years or even 7 years of their retirement right, we feel like the staggered approach is a much better alternative because It does a few things. Okay, now the risks that the staggered approach mitigates, it balances short-term needs and long-term durability. It reduces sequence risk by softening those earlier withdrawals and providing a buffer for the 3-year period from 67 to 70. It maximizes the survivor benefit for Rachel. If Rich were to pass away, he has the higher benefit to begin with, and those delayed retirements are only going to enhance that. And it also provides an additional buffer for unexpected spending that could happen, and in my experience, I've seen is likely to happen over time. Now, next is the tax strategy. Typically, we are very vocal about making sure that you are tax diversified in retirement. In other words, you have a sleeve of money in traditional pre-tax IRAs that you would pay ordinary income tax on. You have a Roth IRA that you'll pay 0% tax on. And then you have a taxable brokerage account where you would pay around maybe 15% long-term capital gains tax. And that way you're in more control of your taxable situation or your tax bracket in retirement, and you have these different levers that you can pull. This scenario would look very different if all of their money was in their pre-tax 401k. Now, luckily, Rich and Rachel took those measures. They maxed out their pre-tax 401ks. They had the ability to fund a mega backdoor Roth and fund the Roth IRAs to the tune of $500,000, and then still had some excess cash flow that they were able to put away in a taxable brokerage account, which is now at about $700,000. So they're tax diversified. So in summary, we reduced spending to $205,000 per year. We bucketed the portfolio to provide a staggered approach and cover their expenses until they were both on Social Security. We optimized for tax-efficient withdrawals, and then, of course, we staggered their Social Security. Financial models, financial planning software, they include volatility in their assumptions, but it's important to note that they still show us a smooth path forward. Real life is anything but smooth. See, the financial plan is the map, and then the path that we actually take is the actual terrain. So what do you do when the market dips or inflation spikes or life throws you another curveball? You don't throw out the plan, you lean on your process. You course correct. And that's where your goals, your plans, and your strategies come in. See, your goals are both big picture and deeply personal. They shape the kind of life you want to live. Flexible, fulfilling, free. But they also get specific, like paying for your daughter's wedding, sponsoring a family vacation, or giving to charity. Your plan is the framework that you use. It's how you'll generate income, how you'll manage expenses, and navigate taxes. It includes your investment approach, your target allocation, your risk tolerance, and how you'll navigate challenging markets. And then your strategies, well, those are the levers that you can actually pull when the landscape changes. Spending adjustments, tax moves, rebalancing, Social Security timing. The tools that keep you aligned even when the road gets bumpy, which is it surely will. So here's what we told Rich and Rachel. You're not failing. You're just transitioning from spending freely to spending with intention. They realized that much of their spending had been reactive, and now they had the opportunity to spend in alignment with what they truly valued. And sometimes the hardest part is just determining exactly what that is and knowing exactly what you want. So we had to do a lot of work ahead of time. Now, sometimes clients come to us knowing exactly what it is, and their plan can be fully formed in a matter of months. Other clients, it may take a year for their financial plan to fully form, for them to fully articulate exactly what it is that they want and know that they are okay with living without something for the foreseeable future. Retirement planning is not about achieving a number. It's about learning to work with what you've got. The real planning starts when you ask, what do we want to protect at all costs? And what are we willing to let go of? If you're wondering whether you can afford your lifestyle in retirement, you might be asking the wrong question. It's not about replacing your old salary. It's about aligning your money with your goals. It's an opportunity to prioritize in designing a life that actually fits, to create a life by design and not by default. If you're on this journey, subscribe. We'll walk through it together right here on Ownership. I'm Nick Sapienza. Thanks for watching.